Welcome to part 2 of tier 1. I want to get a few more stuff out of the way before starting this part. For example, this video will be a bit longer, and I think it took a little bit longer than the previous video, but I believe that is a good thing, since that just means I'm going more in depth in each tier and entry. Regardless, I just want to say that while I've been working on this, I've been also working on an Obsidian neural network, where I've been compiling all my nodes and putting them into Obsidian and adding tags and all this sort of thing. Hopefully this kind of shows us the overlapping theories from each tier, and you can have a more visual representation and more concrete Iceberg experience. But that's pretty much it. I also wanted to ask for you guys' help. I have a lot of people telling me that Phoebe the Fabbington isn't a good username, so I decided to rebrand, and I would like you guys' input. I'm not very good with names, so far all I have is Death the Kid Gooner and Eggington, both of which I feel like are pretty bad still, so let me know if you have any better suggestions. And I know it sounds like I have a stuffy nose, but I don't. I actually just have a deviated septum that doesn't let me breathe, so I'll get it fixed soon, don't worry. I have my appointment in 3 days, so we're gonna schedule a surgery. Yeah, I get to breathe. So pack your bags or take a blinker. I don't know, just get ready. We're gonna start. Today's first entry is going to be the Mandela Effect. What is it? Well, the Mandela Effect is a large group of people remembering the same false detail, usually in pop culture or historical events, and it's named after people falsely recalled Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s, but he actually died in 2013. Now, some common examples you've probably heard of are the Berenstain Bears, are actually the Berenstain Bears, or Luke, I am your father. In actuality, it's No, I am your father. Or you probably remember Monopoly Man having a monocle, but he actually never did. Or Pikachu's black tail tip is actually a solid yellow. Now you have the Fruit of the Loom logo has a cornucopia, and it never did. I remember Pikachu having a brown tail last time I saw, but I'm gonna have to fact check that right now. So as I suspected, I just created my own Mandela effect, where I was like, I swear it wasn't black, it was orange, but in actuality it was just solid yellow, and the bottom is actually black. Brown. Some common claims in this conspiracy with Mandela Effect usually have to do with timeline shifts, CERN opening a rift, reality is being rewritten, and simulation glitches, all of which are just not true. There's a lot of explanations that we'll get into. First, let's disprove the actual claim. So for most of them, it's more like they're just kind of baseless claims. For example, timeline shifts. These don't really have a scientific explanation to them, and it's more rather regarded as sci-fi. Same thing could be said with like reality being rewritten and simulation glitches. The simulation glitches one is true to an extent, and I'll explain how later. So let's go ahead and disprove the CERN allegation first. So what even is CERN? CERN is actually an European organization for nuclear research, and it's based in Geneva, Switzerland. It's the home to LHC, which is a Large Hadron Collider, the world's biggest particle accelerator. The purpose of this particle accelerator is to smash subatomic particles together at near light speed. The reason being to understand fundamental physics, forces, particles, origin of mass, etc. In 2012, CERN discovered the Higgs boson, quote-unquote God particle, which is one of the many uses that this machine has created. What it does not do is open a giant portal. The reason being that people think this is because CERN uses a lot of energy, like a massive amount of energy, and people assume big energy equals dimensional tears with sci-fi logic, which is just not true. Also, strange terminology like God particle, dark matter, antimatter sounds ominous. To people who aren't familiar with these terms, it seems very bizarre. So, you know, the mind wanders. And then you have symbolic weirdness, like CERN has a statue of Shiva, the Hindu god of destruction, outside the building, which I think is poetic. It was a statue gifted to them in 2004 by India themselves, so it's not super bizarre. In Hindu cosmology, destruction is part of rebirth and transformation, not evil, which is pretty cool, so shout out to India for that one. A lot of people conflate particle physics with black magic because they just have like low science literacy. Again, this is a common pattern, I guess you can say, of people just misinterpreting some normal scientific stuff for outlandish and crazy conspiracies. I know how cool it sounds for them to be like, oh, they're tearing, like they're making dimensional tears with so much energy and stuff, and I hate to be the guy that's like, actually, but come on, some of these are just low-key outrageous. I just feel like they can't go on not being correct. Now I could totally get sidetracked and go on about CERN and what it's doing, but CERN doesn't really have anything to do with Mandela Effect or anything, so it's kind of useless to just go over it. The real goals of CERN is to study subatomic particles, discover dark matter interactions, map quantum fields, and replicate cosmic conditions. Now, the fake objectives that people theorize are open wormholes, cause Mandela Effect, break reality, and invite demon/AI gods, which I think are honestly hilarious and super cool, but definitely not possible. You know, on top of that, scientists at CERN have explicitly addressed these claims and said they're science fiction. This is John Ellis' quote, "We are not going to tear apart the fabric of space-time," end quote. And I know how a lot of people are probably thinking, or a lot of conspiracy theories are probably thinking, that's exactly what they want you to think. But honestly, I think I'm just going to believe it. Also, that's just not how physics work, and then on top of that, we have a real-life explanation using psychology and real science to explain the phenomena, so... Now, remember earlier I said simulation glitches is kind of true. It's not correct in the typical sense that we live in a simulation, like we're in a computer and everything, but more like our brain is simulating reality. Not everything you see is what's there. Your brain is just taking visual inputs and interpreting whatever you're focusing on and filling in the rest with logic and reasoning. Same thing with sound. Whenever somebody speaks, they produce vibrations which travel in sound waves, which enter your ears, which get redirected in your ear canal, and your ear canal leads to your eardrums, and then your eardrums send these signals to your brain, and your brain interprets them and then uses language, reasoning, blah 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 blah. You know, you get my point. Your ears are the mic and your mouth is the speaker, and then your brain ends up being the computer interpreting it all. Therefore, it is fair to say that we are living in a simulation in the sense that we are simulating the environment around us and not directly perceiving it for ourselves. So yeah, we're just interpreting reality. I don't know if simulation is the right word, but it's an interpretation of what's actually there. Now, since our brain is considered, I guess, hardware, and our consciousness would be the OS, there could be simulation glitches or interpretation glitches where we misinterpret something. Now, it's gonna sound crazy, but there's something called psychology that can explain any of it. The explanation I find most probable, and honestly the truth, is the phenomenon of false memory, and it's a term in psychology used to explain when your brain fabricates reality internally, remembering something that didn't happen or happened differently from what you recall, with as much confidence as a real memory. This paired with other things like misinformation effect or source monitoring error, schematic memory, and imagination inflation, all perpetuated by media and other people, it kind of creates the illusion of the Mandela effect. Now let's explain a few of these terms. So the misinformation effect is a post-event information alters how you remember the original. Source monitoring error, that just means that you remember a fact but forget where it came from, so fiction gets filled in as truth. I know I'm just throwing out a bunch of terms back to back real quick, but these are necessary to explain the next things going forward, so just go ahead and keep this in the back of your memory even if you don't fully comprehend it. Now, schematic memory is when your brain processes and stores concepts, not pixel perfect ideas or details, so it tends to generalize what you are consuming. And then you have imagination inflation. The more vivid you imagine something, the more likely you think it'll happen, or it actually happened. In addition to all these things, you have even more like social reinforcements where like hundreds of people misremember it identically as you, but most likely than not, once you heard them implant that idea of, like, for example, oh yeah, the Monopoly guy had a monocle, your brain automatically goes like, that's probably true, and then it fills it in for you. Now, of course, there's many ways this can manifest, but another thing that could also like amplify this is meme amplification, where repeated errors become the accepted truth. Just the fact that there's so many people talking about this Mandela effects, you know, bringing it up so often could just make it seem like it's the truth, like it just seems right. And you have fluency illusion, where the more familiar something feels, the more true it seems, which is just, of course, just general. Our brain loves familiarity. Now, there have been studies to prove this as well. Been very, very old, actually. You have Elizabeth Loftus and Palmer in 1974 had an experiment where participants watched a car crash. So when they brought these people in and they asked them how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other, they recalled higher speeds and broken glass. And then when they asked them how fast the cars were going when they hit each other, nobody recalled glass and they said much lower speeds compared to when they used the word smash. They also had a Lost in the Mall study in 1995 where Loftus implanted a completely fake childhood memory in participants, which was getting lost in the mall, and 25% of them believed it happened. Essentially, she proved memory is malleable and not fixed. Quote, "Our memories are constructive. They're reconstructive. Memory works a little bit more like a Wikipedia page. You can go in and change it, but so can other people." And although this conspiracy theory doesn't prove timeline shift or CERN opening a rift or reality being rewritten, it does go to show us how interesting the human psyche is. And there you have it. Mandela Effect is nothing but a psychological phenomenon that's heavily documented and understood. If you want to read more on this, you can go on Wikipedia page of false memory. They have a lot of links and a lot of more stuff that's really interesting that I recommend you check out. That pretty much wraps it up for the Mandela Effect. Next up is transhumanism. Transhumanism is a real movement. It's a real philosophy, and it's often twisted into a dystopian fiction or fear propaganda. Transhumanism is the belief or philosophy that humanity should use technology to enhance or transcend their biological limits, physically, mentally, emotionally, and possibly spiritually. Some of these examples or ways that this could be reached is through cognitive enhancement, which is brain-computer interfaces like Neuralink, nootropics, memory expansion, things like that. Biological upgrades could happen like the CRISPR gene editing, synthetic organs, and anti-aging therapy. You have cyborg integration like prosthetics, embedded chips, and sensory augmentation, and then on top of that you have mind uploading, like theoretical simulation of consciousness on non-biological substrate, like uploading your brain to a computer or the internet. And then you could have life extension, which is radical anti-aging, cryonics, AI, assisted longevity, just being immortal essentially. If this is such a chill philosophy, why do people turn it into a conspiracy theory? Some people believe that, or theorize, elites want to merge humans with AI to enslave us, when in reality most transhumanists want voluntary enhancement and not coercion. Other people say that we'll be turned into drones with chips in our brain, and again, in reality, neuroimplants exist for therapeutic use, like Parkinson's or paralysis. They're not really meant for mind control. Then you have some people saying that it's satanic / anti-human. Most transhumanists are secular humans who view technology as a tool, not a religion. And then there's also people that believe that we're going to lose our souls if we keep merging with technology. It's philosophical, but there's no evidence that cognitive enhancement will lead to dehumanization or losing our souls. As a matter of fact, there's no proof that we have souls at all. Lastly, we have people saying this is how they'll force digital ID, surveillance, and social credit. Some government policies do push surveillance, but that's not transhumanism itself. That's an authoritarianism, and they don't conflate. That's more of what the government will do with transhumanism, and honestly, I wouldn't doubt it. The ideology and philosophy behind transhumanism isn't bad at all. It's people demonizing it and misunderstanding what they're striving for. I don't think transhumanism is bad at all. If anything, I believe it's a good thing. But the things that can ruin transhumanism are things like capitalism and people in power, not really the ideology itself. Humans can be artificially advanced further through mechanical or computational augments, a belief found most often in anarchist groups. All it's really saying is that humans have outgrown the need to leave behind dead weight, and that the key to success is to just further augment ourselves to the point where we have no dead weight at all. And that is, of course, through the means of transhumanism. Again, transhumanism groups aren't really bad in and of themselves. The ideologies aren't bad either. It's just basically cyberpunk, honestly. This one's not so much of a conspiracy as to just kind of explaining what transhumanism could be potentially, and honestly kind of what it's trying to be, at least. Most negative views on transhumanism come from different ideologies bleeding into it. Something I realized that I should probably start doing as well in this video is add my point of view, why I think it's on the iceberg. So we're gonna start doing that from now on. I'm gonna tell you guys why I think a certain entry is on the iceberg. So why is transhumanism on the iceberg? Well, it sounds futuristic and inhuman, so it's easy fear bait. It also overlaps with real themes like bioethics, AI power, and technological inequality. And sci-fi media has already framed it as dark, like Cyberpunk 2077, Black Mirror, Deus Ex. It also threatens religious or traditional beliefs about human nature and the soul. What I've noticed about a lot of these entries is that many of them appear to be from fear of the unknown, fear of misunderstanding, fear of not understanding. And I think that's kind of an issue that we should fix. Hence me making these videos, of course. I know, not everybody and their mom believes this sort of thing, but there are people that do believe it, and then this also expands to even more well-known stuff about just life in general. And then on top of that, ask somebody why the sky is blue, ask somebody how their eyes work, they cannot answer, they have no clue. People are just misinformed about simple things that we should know. Being informed is very easy. I think the hard part comes from knowing where and what to be informed on. So a lot of these fears, these conspiracies arise from just people not knowing the basis of reality, the actual truth behind the content being produced, behind the claims being made. And I hope that this video clears that up for you. I hope that me going over these topics kind of helps you understand what actually is happening. All I'm trying to say is to be as skeptical as you can. Be as skeptical as possible. That's the best advice I can give. Next up, we have creepypastas. This entry is pretty short. There's not much to talk about. What even is a creepypasta? Well, a creepypasta is a short user-generated horror story shared online. The name comes from copypasta, which copy-paste, and they're designed to feel real, like found footage or anonymous testimonies, but they're just modern equivalent to folklore. Think of it as a digital urban legend. Their origin in Rice was popularized on forums like 4chan, Something Awful, Reddit, and Creepypasta Wiki. And it exploded in the late 2000s and early 2010s, a lot of which inspired YouTube readings, ARG, and fan art communities. Why is it even on the conspiracy theory iceberg? Creepypastas show up in conspiracy culture because they're easily mistaken for real stories by younger or less skeptical viewers. For example, the Russian sleep experiment. When I was younger, I thought that was real. I was convinced that was real. I remember I saw it with my parents in the living room watching YouTube, and I was convinced this was documentary. They also blurred the line between fiction and a quote-unquote what if. Some were even marketed as real events or government leaks, like SCP-style redacted files. They occasionally inspired real-world violence, which conspiracy theories latch on to. For example, like think the Slenderman cases. And I think this is the reason why it's even on the iceberg. So let's talk about the most infamous violent act committed over a creepypasta. I think Slenderman just took over my microphone or something because it just started being so bad out of nowhere. I have to re-record the whole entire section of this. I didn't even notice until replaying it. In 2014, in Waukesha, Wisconsin, a Slenderman stabbing. The perpetrators being Morgan Geyser and Anissa Ware, who were both 12, and the victim was Peyton Lutner, who was also 12. The way this happened was that the two girls lured their friend into the woods during a sleepover, and they stabbed her 19 times with a kitchen knife, to which she was left bleeding in the park and had to crawl all the way to a bike path until she was rescued. Morgan and Anissa confessed they did it to quote-unquote please Slenderman, and Morgan was later diagnosed with schizophrenia, to which she had delusions and hallucinations. Anissa claimed she genuinely believed that Slenderman was real and could harm them. Both were tried as adults, but given institutional sentence, not prison. Morgan says, "We had to. He would kill our families if we didn't." Anissa Ware received a 25-year sentence in a mental health institution and was later released in 2021 under supervision. Morgan Geyser received 40 years in his psychiatric care and is still instituted. Of course, with crazy things that have to do with creepypastas and whatnot, the internet had a very interesting reaction, to which had massive revaluation of creepypasta sites, digital myth-making, and youth media exposure. Creepypasta.com posted a statement urging people to treat the stories as fiction and not feed delusions. I'm sure there are a lot more real-life violence that deal with creepypastas or are related to creepypastas in one way or another, but I'm not going to cover all of them. That could be a whole video in and of itself, so let me know if that's a video that you would eventually want to watch. Next entry is the Black-Eyed Kids, also known as the Black-Eyed Children. Something I just thought about doing right now is to start incorporating the author's interpretation and reasoning behind putting the entries in the iceberg. And the author does this by incorporating a PDF file linked to the iceberg, which you can all find on Reddit. Not every single entry, but a lot of them. So yeah, I just thought I'd go ahead and add these in as well and give my take on it afterwards. Also, for some of these, I'm going to also add like a probability meter or something like that, because some of them are a lot more likely than others. Some of them are just based on truth, like they're just real life, and others are just esoteric spiritualism or whatnot. So I'll go ahead and put a meter, and it's going to be cool and interesting because it's not going to go off numbers. It's going to go off cool looking animals. So next entry we have is the Black-Eyed Kids or Black-Eyed Children. They are allegedly pale, emotionless children around the ages of 6 to 16 with jet black eyes, completely pitch black, that appear at night, ask to come into your house or car, and then speak oddly and robotic. Usually they induce this overwhelming dread or paralysis, and they completely resemble classic vampire lore. On top of that, they kind of seem to show up in areas where mishaps have happened, like car accidents or house burning down. A lot of people also associate them with aliens, but this one's not so concrete, just kind of forms. One of the main driving points about Black Eyed Kids is that they always ask for permission to enter into your building, into your shop, into whatever, which is literally just vampire inspired. And I bring this up because it's really important, because in 1996, journalist Brian Bethel posted the first known Black Eyed Kids encounter story on an internet forum. Again, a lot of these will come from forums, so the credibility is not really there. He describes two kids approaching his car at night asking for a ride. Now, that's pretty much it. A lot of the information online, from things like Wikipedia to actual forums and whatnot, tend to describe them as creepypasta and urban legends. There's no real concrete conspiracy behind it. Now, there is some more stories, like in the late 2000s, stories spread via creepypasta forum and YouTube narrators and Reddit. Then in 2012 and 2016, from 2012 to 2016, it became a meme tier entity thanks to paranormal witnesses, creepypasta wiki, and clickbait websites. Kind of became just a joke of the internet. Now it's used in ARGs, horror games, and indie movies, but again, never backed by physical proof. Black Eyed Kids, the conspiracy theory Iceberg explanation, says sightings of small children with blacked out eyes often appear during tragedy. The explanation for this is involuntary summoning. If summonings are tied to phenomenal releases of power, as mentioned in later tiers, and if human will and emotions are a form of power, then perhaps during tragedy, masses of people may perform accidental summoning of simplistic supernatural ending. And this is just the plot of Jujutsu Kaisen, so yeah. Now let's go over some claims. One of the claims I've seen is there's thousands of sightings. All stories are anonymous, secondhand, or posted on horror forums. Again, this severely drops the credibility, and we have no real proof. It's just word of mouth, essentially. We can't really believe this, and we probably shouldn't. Then we also have the claim that they cause fear or paralysis. That's just a common panic response, especially under sleep deprivation or night encounters. If you get woken up and you see something out of nowhere, you're gonna get, yeah, that's gonna happen. So that's not too crazy to say. It's not like they're using energy to actually paralyze you, but again, the encounters might just be misrepresentations of what they actually are. They asked to be invited in. That's just vampire mythology and not evidence. I really don't see how that could be like evidence or useful at all. These are just claims that I've seen that he said, but by like a few people at most, to be honest. Another claim is they might be aliens and demons. And there's no physical evidence of this, no hair, blood, clothes, or video ever verified. The fact that there's no videos is just, come on guys, we're at digital age. If there's no videos of it, it's most likely not true. When it comes to supernatural conspiracies like these, there's bad things that government does that there's no videos of, so. Now let's go over the psychological explanation. So number one, the most obvious probably, is hallucinations. This one not so likely because there's a lot of people. I could chalk it down to mass hysteria perhaps. It makes sense, I think. Mass hysteria would make sense. Like a bunch of people consume this media of creepypastas, or they hear people talking about it, and then they go to sleep, they have a nightmare, they wake up, and they're like, okay, yeah, this is a black-eyed kid outside my door. Another explanation behind this could be sleep paralysis, hallucination. Again, if you're not aware with sleep paralysis, when you're sleeping and you're in REM sleep and you wake up, there's a chance that you could be paralyzed once you wake up, which just literally paralyzes your whole body, but you're still awake and you can't move, you can't talk, you literally can't do anything. It's like your body is still asleep while you are conscious, which is super scary. And just a life hack, by the way, for any of you, if this happened to you, it's best to start with wiggling your toes and fingers and then working your way to the rest of your body. But don't freak out, you will see hallucinations. Some people do claim they feel like they have a giant weight on their chest and stuff. It's just, again, their body's asleep and they're paralyzed. So, and then you're literally just waking up from a super lucid state, so your brain is racing all over the place, and it's not hard or impossible to see. And I have gone through this, which is pretty interesting. But again, it's nothing crazy. It's just, again, something fairly common, explainable through psychology. Now we have apophenia, which is seeing human traits in random shadows or faces. This is, again, just another psychological phenomena. I don't know if you guys have ever been driving at night and you're driving back from a horror movie and it's nighttime, and then as you're getting home, you're driving through your neighborhood and you start feeling like there's people around you, or there's people following your car, or you see faces or people just standing outside, and then you look back. This is usually closely to the peripheral vision and you look back to that area and there's nobody there, guess what? It's just, again, apophenia. And this is caused because we're paranoid people. Fear is just an evolutionary trait to keep us alive. So our brain will automatically fill things in for us and make us be wary of our surroundings. We also have cultural suggestion. Once you hear the story, you're primed to see it. I already kind of went over this. So yeah, that's kind of it. And then you have mass storytelling effect, where repetition equals perceived credibility. So if we have a lot of people sharing the same experience online and making it seem real, then people will actually believe it and become more immersed in the story. Now, I'm going to make it out of 10. The probability meter, 10 being like a real life historic event that did happen or that is real. And I would say a 1 is like a claim just based off of no knowledge, just no evidence, but it seems like that could work. I could see that. And of course, then we just have the 0. It's gonna be a 0 to 10. 0 just being like completely false, not true at all. I think I would have to rate Black Eyed Kids a 0.5 out of 10, just because it's not a 1 completely. It's like I could sort of get behind it if I didn't know anything at all about the internet, but the fact that we just have no real evidence and it's just all based off of forums and creepypastas, and the only like sightings or explanations can be explained through psychology and sleep, I'd have to say 0.5. I don't want to say 0 because again, we have no evidence completely saying no. We just lack the evidence to say yes at all, and using like logic, we can just say probably not. But there is still a chance. Moving on to the next entry, we have orbs. In photography, orbs are spherical light anomalies that show up in photos, especially in low light settings with flash or environments with dust, rain, or insects. There is scientific explanations to these, but what the Iceberg is referring to in this case is the more spiritual side to these. Which, the case that you are probably most likely familiar with is whenever you encounter a supernatural being and you take your camera, you can see these orbs with your camera, whether it be through video or pictures. The actual explanation to this is when photographing the sun, lots of light are often seen in resulting pictures and are considered some manner of supernatural occurrence. And then the explanation to this is the sun is divine. Many polytheistic religions held the idea that many natural phenomena were the actions of divine or were deities themselves. The most common of these was the sun. In the Bible, there are references to sinful humans being unable to gaze directly upon God's face, or being unable to be within the presence of God. Perhaps the natural consequences of sun exposure, such as eye pain, sunburn, etc., are the consequence of imperfect beings being within the presence of the divine. In some contexts, spherical or orbs are a symbol of royal power. An orb is a sphere topped with a cross symbolizing a monarch's power and justice. In comparison, the scientific explanation and causes are a lot more lackluster than the conspiracy theory icebergs, but let's go over it. One of the many examples or scientific causes is when light from a flash reflects off of nearby airborne particles, the camera captures the scattered light as a blurred or glowing sphere. You can see these particles in the air. For example, if you wake up in the morning and the sun is shining right into your window, you will see all the dust in the air. If you were to grab your phone, it would kind of make a sphere-shaped image, and it's pretty cool. This is just more of an optical phenomena called backscatter or lens flare, and it's not a spirit, not an angle, or not a divine message. There's different types of orb. We have white orbs that are caused by dust, pollen, or moisture near the lens. We have colored orbs, which are caused by chromatic aberration from the lens bending the light. And we have sun orbs, internal lens reflections from intense sunlight. And lastly, ironically, we have ghost orbs, which are pareidolia plus low-res night vision cameras. Pareidolia, I think that's how you say it. With the scientific claims at hand, we also have the non-scientific claim. For example, some people say that they appear only in sacred or spooky places. For one, this is not true at all. These orbs will appear as long as you meet the right conditions. And then second off, even if that was true, that's just bias because people only photograph those places expecting anomalies. Another point that is constantly brought up is that they're not visible to the naked eye. While this is true, the reasoning behind this is pretty easy to explain, and it's completely scientific and grounded in reality. The reason why orbs are camera specific artifacts and not real objects is because the way that cameras are engineered and made is completely different from the way that our eyes work. Of course, cameras are modeled after our eyes or very similar to them, but they are not one-to-one. The same way we can't hear higher frequencies than dogs can, it's just like that. We're just engineered differently. The last claim we have is that they float and move. The explanation behind this is camera focus plus long exposure can blur particles in motion. Because of the given spiritual nature to this one, I think I have to give it a 0 on the rating. And that's gonna wrap it for this video. I'm not gonna lie, I got pretty lazy and I procrastinated making this video for a while. But yeah, and it's not as long as I expected it to be because there's so many other entries that I still have to get through. And it's been a while since I posted, so I'm just gonna post this one and just leave it at 30 minutes. So hope you guys enjoyed this one. Make sure to like and subscribe and follow Dr. Evil Barnacle on Instagram, or I don't know.